The homeless man blocking the subway entrance shouts angrily, "You think you're better than me just because you got fancy clothes and a job?" 53-year-old Army veteran Marcus Thompson stops dead in his tracks, staring at the ragged stranger, whose voice sounds hauntingly familiar, while rush-hour commuters push past them both, completely unaware that these two men once saved each other's lives in Afghanistan. Stories like this remind us that heroes can be found in the most unexpected places. Hit subscribe and tell us about a time someone surprised you with their hidden strength. Every person has a story worth knowing. Marcus Thompson was running late for his job at the accounting firm downtown. The subway platform was packed with the usual Tuesday morning rush, business people checking phones and students clutching coffee cups. He moved through the crowd with the practiced efficiency of someone who had been making this commute for 8 years. At the entrance to the northbound platform, a man sat slumped against the tiled wall. His clothes were torn and dirty, his hair matted, his face covered by weeks of unkempt beard. A cardboard sign beside him read, "Homeless vet, anything helps," in shaky handwriting. A few commuters dropped coins into his cup without looking at his face. Marcus had seen him there before, always in the same spot, always with the same hollow expression. Like many busy commuters, Marcus usually walked past without making eye contact. Today felt different somehow, but he could not put his finger on why. The homeless man looked up as Marcus approached, and their eyes met for just a moment. There was something in that gaze, something that made Marcus pause mid-step. But the moment passed quickly as other commuters pushed between them, and Marcus continued toward his train. As he reached the platform edge, Marcus heard a commotion behind him. A group of teenagers was surrounding the homeless man, their voices getting louder and more aggressive. "Hey old man," one of them called out, "you're blocking the entrance. Find somewhere else to beg." The homeless man, whose name was Robert Chun, slowly got to his feet. He was 55 years old, though the streets had aged him far beyond his years. "Yeah, well maybe you should find somewhere else to walk," he replied, his voice carrying an edge that made the teenager step back slightly. "What did you just say to me?" the lead teenager demanded, moving closer. "You think you're tough, old man?" Robert squared his shoulders, and despite his ragged appearance, something in his posture suggested he was not someone to be taken lightly. "I said find another way around. This is a public space." The teenager laughed and turned to his friends. "Listen to this guy. Acts all tough, but he's just a worthless bum who probably never worked a day in his life." More commuters were starting to notice the confrontation. Some moved away quickly, not wanting to get involved. Others stopped to watch, their faces showing mixtures of curiosity and disgust. A few people pulled out phones to record what looked like it might become an entertaining conflict. Robert felt the familiar surge of anger that had gotten him into so much trouble over the years. The rage that had cost him his marriage, his job, his home. The fury that came from being invisible to the world despite everything he had given to protect it. "You don't know anything about me, kid," Robert said, his voice growing dangerous. "You have no idea what I've done or what I've been through." The teenager stepped even closer, emboldened by his friends in the growing crowd. "Oh yeah, what have you done? Besides smell up the subway and ask for handouts?" From across the platform, Marcus heard the escalating voices and turned around. Something about the homeless man's stance, the way he held himself despite his circumstances, triggered a memory that Marcus could not quite place. "I served my country for 22 years, Robert said, his voice now carrying the authority that had once commanded respect from subordinates and superiors alike. "I bled for people like you who think freedom is something you're just entitled to." The teenager laughed again, louder this time. "Sure you did, crazy old man. What branch? The Salvation Army?" The crowd laughed, and Robert felt something snap inside him. Without thinking, he reached into the inner pocket of his torn jacket and pulled out a small leather case. His hands shook slightly as he opened it, revealing a medal that caught the overhead lights like captured lightning. The bronze star medal with Valor device gleamed against its ribbon, the medal still polished despite everything else in Robert's life having fallen apart. The laughter died immediately as people realized they were looking at something real, something that represented genuine heroism. Marcus pushed through the crowd to get a better look, and when he saw the medal, his blood turned to ice water. Not because he recognized the medal itself, but because he recognized the specific ribbon configuration, the unit citation ribbons arranged beneath it, the combination that could only belong to one person. His mind raced back 15 years to a forward operating base outside Kandahar. He saw faces of men he had served with, heard voices of soldiers who had become brothers. And suddenly, impossibly, he knew exactly who he was looking at. Bobby? Marcus called out, using the nickname he had not spoken in over a decade. Bobby Chun? Robert's head snapped up at the sound of his old name, his eyes searching the crowd until they found Marcus. For a moment, neither man moved. Then recognition dawned like sunrise, slow, and then all at once. Holy shit, Robert whispered. Tommy Townsend? The teenagers forgot about their confrontation. The commuters forgot about their trains. The entire platform seemed to hold its breath as these two middle-aged men stared at each other across 15 years and a lifetime of changes. Marcus pushed through the crowd until he was standing directly in front of Robert. Up close, he could see past the beard and the dirt and the exhaustion to the face of the man who had once been his squad leader, his mentor, his friend. Bobby, what happened to you? Marcus asked, his voice breaking slightly. Robert looked down at his own appearance, suddenly ashamed in a way he had not felt in years. Life happened, Tommy. Life happened and I couldn't handle it. The crowd was still watching, but now the energy had completely changed. This was no longer entertainment. This was something sacred, something private that they were privileged to witness. Marcus reached into his own jacket pocket and pulled out a wallet. From it, he extracted his own military ID and a small case similar to Robert's. When he opened it, the bronze star medal inside was identical to Robert's, earned in the same firefight on the same day 15 years ago. You saved my life that day, Marcus said quietly. When that IED went off, and I was trapped under the Humvee, you ran through enemy fire to pull me out. The medic said I would have bled to death if you had waited even 2 more minutes. Robert's eyes filled with tears as the memory came flooding back. You were so young, he said. Just a kid from Ohio who wanted to serve his country. I couldn't let you die in that desert, and you saved mine right back, Marcus continued. When those insurgents flanked us during the evacuation, you held them off while I called in air support. We both earned these medals that day, Bobby. We both came home because we looked out for each other. The teenagers who had started the confrontation now stood in stunned silence. One of them, a girl who could not have been more than 16, stepped forward with tears in her eyes. Sir, she said to Robert, I'm sorry. We didn't know. We didn't understand. Robert looked at her, then at the crowd of commuters who were no longer seeing a homeless nuisance, but a human being with a story worth knowing. Most people don't. Robert said simply, That's not your fault. Marcus was already pulling out his phone. Bobby, I'm calling my wife. You're coming home with me today. We're going to figure this out together. Robert shook his head. Tommy, I can't. I'm not the same person I was. I've got problems, issues you don't want to deal with. Marcus grabbed his old friend's shoulders, not caring about the dirt or the smell. Bobby, 15 years ago in Afghanistan, what did we promise each other? What was the pact we made? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. No man left behind. That's right. And I left you behind, brother. I came home, got my life together, got married, got a good job, and I never looked for you. I never checked to see if you were okay. That ends today. A woman in the crowd stepped forward and pressed a $20 bill into Robert's hand. Then a businessman did the same. Then a student. Then a mother with her children. Within minutes, people were lined up to shake Robert's hand, to thank him for his service, to acknowledge that they had been wrong to judge him by his appearance. But Marcus was not interested in the crowd's sudden change of heart. He was focused on his friend, on the brother in arms who had somehow fallen through the cracks while Marcus was building his comfortable civilian life. The train Marcus had been rushing to catch came and went. Then another. He spent the morning sitting on a bench with Robert, catching up on 15 years of divergent paths. Robert told him about the PTSD that had cost him his marriage, the nightmares that made steady employment impossible, the slow slide from veteran benefits to unemployment, to homelessness, to this subway platform. Marcus told him about the therapy that had helped him process their shared trauma, the understanding wife who had supported him through the difficult transition to civilian life, the career that had given him purpose and stability. By noon, Robert was in Marcus's guest bedroom, showered and shaved and wearing clean clothes. By evening, he was sitting at Marcus's dinner table, meeting his wife and children, sharing stories of their father's military service that brought both laughter and tears. It took 6 months of counseling, job applications, and bureaucratic battles with the VA system, but Robert Chun eventually found his footing again. Marcus stood beside him every step of the way, honoring the promise they had made to each other in a dusty forward operating base half a world away. A year later, Robert had his own apartment and a job at the same accounting firm where Marcus worked. He had reconnected with his own children who had thought he was dead. He had begun speaking at veteran support groups, sharing his story to help other soldiers who were struggling with the transition to civilian life. The teenager who had confronted him that day on the subway platform tracked him down through social media. Her name was Ashley, and she asked if she could interview him for a school project about hidden heroes in everyday life. The presentation she gave won first place in her school's history fair. Marcus and Robert still met for coffee every Tuesday morning before work, usually at a small cafe near the subway station where they had found each other again. They talked about their families, their jobs, their plans for the future. But sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, two men who understood each other in ways that only shared trauma and mutual respect could create. The Bronze Star medal sat in frames in both of their homes now. Reminders not just of their bravery in combat, but of the courage it took to reach out to a friend in need, to admit when life had become unmanageable, and to accept help when pride said to refuse it. Sometimes the most important battles are not fought against foreign enemies, but against the isolation and judgment that can destroy a person from within. And sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from finding the strength to lift up someone who has fallen. Every person walking past you on the street has a story. Every homeless veteran sitting on a sidewalk was once someone's son, someone's protector, someone's hero. The medals may be hidden, but the service and sacrifice they represent never disappear. Robert and Marcus learned that day that brotherhood does not end when the uniform comes off. It lasts forever, waiting patiently for the moment when it is needed most, ready to remind us that no one fights alone and no one should be left behind.